Greetings, everybody. Thank you all for coming. And first of all, apologies for the slightly scuzzy-looking backdrop here. We had a flood. One of the pipes burst 2 floors above us, and we had a lot of flood damage. So we're deep into the repair zone, and it's almost done, but I apologize for the way we look. I'm thrilled to have such a great group of people here. Before I introduce them, I just wanted to quickly tell you that if you have nothing filling your schedule tomorrow, we have a great conference all day tomorrow as well, which is about access to higher ed and the challenges faced by low-income students, both in terms of affordability and accessibility. So from 9 to 5 tomorrow, same spot. Come back and listen to great people. We have David Leonhardt coming from The Upshot. We have Jacques Steinberg coming from Say Yes to Education. And there's a lot of stuff on our website if you want to know more. So with no further ado, let me introduce our stellar panel here. On my immediate left, we have Anna Holmes, who is now at Fusion and was the founder of Jezebel. And I think is this the first time you've come and spoken in the newsroom? I think so. Yeah, well, now you're hitting the big time. And we have Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is currently our journalist-in-residence here, and he's going to be doing a couple of events for us, one next month with Chris Hayes on April 23rd, is that right? Yes. Something like that. And then Tony Scott from the New York Times, the chief film critic there. And so I'm going to let you guys go take it and run with it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Us. So, well, thank you guys for coming, first of all. It's an absolute honor to be here with Tony and with Anna, two of the smartest people as far as I know in media. I hate that term, but I don't have anything else to say. It's not newspapers anymore, it's not magazines, it's not internet. In media, two of the smartest people I know in media. And so to come here and have this conversation, you guys are in for a treat. That's the first thing. Oh, bonsoir. Ça va? Oui, ça va? That's my French teacher. My old French teacher. Well, I haven't seen him. I've been jetting back and forth, so I feel guilty. Désolé, Kathleen. So, see, we were just talking about studying French. See that? See how that happens? Wow. As excited as I am about talking to Anna and talking to Tony, and as much wisdom as you guys are about to get from these two, I have to say that you guys kind of got cheated because when we originally did this, it was supposed to be me, Tony, and David, and you didn't get cheated because Anna's here. You got cheated because David, I think, was carrying around more wisdom than all 3 of us put together. David Carr, yes, thank you. I was getting ready to say that. I was getting there. David Carr was carrying around more wisdom than really the 3 of us put together about media. There was no sharper observer, of media than David. And you guys who might have, if you didn't, you missed a treat. But his column every Monday. Those of you who read it know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who didn't read it, I'm sorry for you. I really am. David passed away in February, right, Tony? Yes.
February 12th.
Yes, David passed away on February 12th. Left us, and just really left a great void of knowledge. I was asked to teach his class up at Boston University, and Sarah very kindly gave me permission to be able to do that because they didn't have anybody to fill in. And every class, I feel like apologizing to these kids. Because it's a class about media criticism, and if you wanted somebody to talk about media criticism, David was really the only one. And I'll say a few words about just craft-wise, and then about him personally. The thing that set him apart, as far as I was concerned, as a writer, first of all, David was a beautiful writer, a beautiful, former of sentences. In that ugly sentence I just gave you, a beautiful former of sentences. But he was a craftsman when it came to sentences. So the first thing was he was a gorgeous writer. But the other thing was, as a columnist, man, he was a reporter. And he would never, sit on his ass and just pontificate about something. He was always, making calls, and that gave, his columns a kind of thickness and a kind of richness that I think, oftentimes in the world of opinion is kind of lacking. I learned that lesson from him many years ago. It's almost been 20 years now, back in 1996 as a young man at Howard University who, as I've said before, was effectively majoring in the art of fucking up. That's what I was doing. And just fucking up at everything, fucking up at college, fucking up at life, failing life, all around. And I walked into the newsroom of Washington City paper, and, David, who, as far as, knowing anything about me, only had some poetry that I had written. It was really bad. And a few college newspaper clips, which I think were marginally better. And I remember the first words he said to me, or not the first words, but in the course of the interview, what he said to me, he said, you're the shit, man. You're the shit. And he said it with such, confidence in that kind of boisterous way that David would talk, that I believed him. And I thought, yeah, maybe I am, And this was before, he became, David Carr. But he had this kind of caring and confidence, that he would just instill in young people. And I, had the luck of being on that staff. Most of us were under 25. And he drove us in a way that, I haven't experienced with an editor since then. David was the kind of person who would bring in articles from the New Yorker, from Esquire, from GQ, and me, I barely knew what this stuff was. I had some awareness, but not really. And we say, you should be doing this. You should be doing this. And we were a little alternative newspaper covering local DC. And he had the highest standards. There's no reason why you can't do this right here, And he would convene us in workshops. He was basically giving us J school. I mean, that's what we were getting, except we got paid it. I mean, we got paid for it. It was poverty wages, but it was payment nonetheless. I couldn't believe anybody would pay you to write anything. So the idea that somebody would, tell you to go out into the world and ask questions and then pay you for it was a blessing. And so, I say this with no exaggeration. As far as I'm concerned, David saved my life. Working for him was the first thing that had ever happened to me where I realized I could actually do something. I could be good at something. And, what he taught me was in journalism, the beautiful thing is, and I think this is really, really important for those of you who are grad students here. At some point, you have to go out in the world and you have to show and prove. And no one really cares what your resume line is. No one, really cares where you worked. I mean, that helps a little bit. People only care a little bit about your recommendation letter. But at the end of the day, what matters is the proof. What matters is the done thing. And so this was a field where I could come in as a college dropout who, and no one cared about my GPA. And no one cared who I knew. What they cared was about the clips, And the person who exposed, me to that was David. And I had the great fortune of, not just having him as a mentor, but having him as a friend. And so he's not here, and I'm sorry he's not here, and I'm sorry you guys are gonna miss out. In his place, you have, as I said, as far as I'm concerned, two of the smartest people talking about media. A.O. Scott, can I call you Tony?
You can.
Am I allowed to call you Tony on this panel? I saw in Gawker one time. See, Tony's a buddy, and I saw in Gawker one time, you're kind of like a pretentious media person if you call A.O. Scott Tony. So whenever I introduce him to other people, I'm like, I want to say this is A.O. Scott. Make sure.
You're the least pretentious media person I've ever met.
Thank you. I'll take that. I get to call you Tony.
Yes.
What does the O stand for?
Well, let's not get,
Are you not going to tell us?
It's a little personal.
Are you really not going to tell us?
It's Oliver.
Okay, all right. We won't
Now
call
you
you
all
Oliver.
know.
We won't say that.
So now you can all really,
Right.
You're all my intimate friends now.
Tony is a beautiful writer. Also, and any of you guys that read movie criticism, Tony is a beautiful writer, insightful writer. Tony will talk a little bit about his path, but I'll just to give you a little preview. The most interesting thing, and I think this, sort of doubles down on the point I was making, is Tony came into this world through books. And when, he started off as a critic for the Times, was not, any sort of wise man when it came to cinema. Do I have that right? Okay.
Very much so.
Okay, all right, so he'll talk more about that in a little bit. But was not a wise man about cinema, but he just got into it and he kind of, he did the damn thing. And now he's, A.O. Scott. All of a sudden he's A.O. Scott, just like that. Your name's not Tony anymore. Now you're A.O. Scott. That's how it happens. That's the beauty of journalism. And so.
Hey, you can be whoever you.
That's right.
Whoever you say you are.
That's right. Exactly.
Proven otherwise. Yeah.
When I was at Time Magazine for a period, I was going by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I thought that made me sound more sophisticated. That's really my middle name, but I thought it made it more sophisticated.
A lot of syllables.
Yes. So anyway, Tony will talk a little bit about his arc. He used to do this thing, which sadly was discontinued, even before now, called The Sweet Spot with David. And so originally we had this idea to do it live. It was actually a beautiful creation. Tony and David were friends. You could kind of see the chemistry there. It was a pretty cool enterprise. Anna's here, Anna Holmes. And one of the reasons why, when David passed and we were, stuck with the pragmatics of the thing, there was only one other person I really wanted to get here, and that was Anna. And I think that is because Anna is someone who I've seen now be successful as a, entrepreneur. Can I call you that with Jezebel? Does entrepreneur work? I think it works.
I don't think.
Creator?
Because I didn't own it.
Okay, creator, does creator work?
Yeah.
Okay, creator. Maybe that's
I didn't own it, and it wasn't any of my money.
Okay, all right. As a creator, as somebody that actually made a thing, a whole thing, as a maker of Jezebel, I have a soft spot for writers. I love Anna's writing. Anna used to do a column for the Washington Post. Martin Luther King, what was that about? You did it on Martin Luther King. It was a weird
column.
one. Yes, Martin Luther King did an advice column for a while.
Ebony.
Yes.
Was it for Ebony? It was for Ebony.
That was a great
Yeah.
piece.
Those were weird advice columns.
Yeah.
They're very strange.
Anyway, Anna wrote a piece about Martin Luther King's advice column, which is totally like the sort of story we would have loved at City Paper. Who knew Martin Luther King did an advice column for Ebony, So Anna's been successful there. She's been successful in print and is now being successful in video at Fusion. Although you guys do a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I would say it's like interactives and
Okay,
video.
interactive.
And some text stuff,
Thank you.
but I'm less interested in text.
Okay. I'm not hip enough to say interact. I go straight to video. Okay. In the interactive space. And so I think, and in addition to that, I'm sorry, before she even came to Jezebel, I had a can I say lengthy career in magazines?
Yeah, but a tortured one.
Okay, a lengthy but tortured career, but a real one. And I think, quite a bit of that was the inspiration for Jezebel. So, we'll hear a little bit about that tonight. I think if you guys would just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. What specifically do you have in the works? Can you give the folks in the audience just a bit of a sneak preview of what you might be doing now that's really, really interesting? This is being videoed, isn't it? Oh, sorry, it's going out into the world.
I was
going to say you're going to get a secret that no one else will see, but now the world's going to see it.
Well, yeah, but now I feel like I don't want to talk about the one project I want to do because I don't want the whole world to know about it because I don't want it to get copied. I know. Maybe I'll try and be vague about it. What I'm most interested in doing are stories that aren't necessarily just words. I don't want to sound like I'm contemptuous of words. I have a fraught relationship with words.
Why? What is that?
I don't know. I mean, I like reading them. I don't always like editing them. I get really irritated sometimes by editing, even though I think I'm good at it. It's just, when someone doesn't write well and you have to fix their stuff.
But you wanted to be in magazines when you started, so what happened?
Magazines
Not to take you off topic.
Magazines became less interesting to me. And I think the older that I got, well, first of all, I saw how the sausage was being made, and I wasn't as interested in magazines because I saw the ways they were produced. And I think maybe just moving to New York and working in magazines just underscored how out of touch a lot of them felt. The one example I'll use is I'd worked at Glamour magazine between, I think, 99 and 2001. And they were in the Condé Nast building, which was at 4 Times Square. Now they're downtown. And you'd walk into this building, and they were making all of these glossy magazines, many of which were aspirational. Vogue, Glamour, I don't think they do Town and Country, but like Bon Appetit and et cetera, et cetera. Vanity Fair. And the staffs of these magazines were all like the same sort of person, both in terms of like the economic class they had been raised in, the color of their skin. I mean, it was, and then you'd walk out into Times Square and you saw this world that, that was completely different.
New York,
or you saw the world, and it bore no relation to a lot of the stuff that was being produced in the magazines.
Right.
And that's when I was about 28. And I started to feel disillusioned with magazines, I think, because of the disconnect from what I was seeing and what was being produced in some of these higher profile places. And also just that, I knew how they were made, and I knew that, the fact that there was a lip gloss on the 44th page of Vanity Fair's like Hot New Things was not necessarily because the lip gloss was good, but was because the beauty editor felt obliged to, show the lip gloss of Clinique because they'd taken out an ad. I mean, really, like kind of disturbing stuff. I'm not accusing Vanity Fair of putting in Clinique lip gloss. I'm just using that as an example. But especially with women's magazines, like that was just very much, a lot of it was just selling stuff. So that's why I became disillusioned with magazines. They just weren't as exciting.
So what are you more interested in now? Since you're going to be vague about what specifically you're working on. You don't want to tell the world.
Well, what I will say is that one thing I'm working on with someone that Ta-Nehisi and I both know is a project that has to do with young adults who were arrested during various Black Lives Matter protests in various parts of the country, both in the St. Louis area and in New York and in Cleveland and in Oakland. But I'm not going to go any further than that because I think it's such a good idea. I'm afraid someone's going to steal it.
Okay.
And it's going to take a long time to produce because it's not just like, let's talk to them and write a story.
When will we see this remarkable manifestation of your genius?
Hopefully in late April,
Okay.
because it requires a lot of reporting and then it requires a lot of architecture, digital architecture for the sort of story that we want to do. I'd say, the best example of the sort of things I want to do in the future are maybe the things that we've been doing recently. The biggest project I oversaw was about street harassment in Mexico City. You saw that one.
I did not see it
you
actually.
didn't?
In Mexico City. No, I didn't. I'm being a good feminist, sorry.
Okay, well, I'll send it to you. We'd taken a Brooklyn artist who has traveled around the country and spoken to women about their experiences being sexually harassed. She draws their portraits and we pastes posters of their portraits along with I don't want to say a slogan, but like a sentence, something that they've said. And she puts this around, various urban areas. And the posters are pretty much in your face because it's usually a defiant-looking female looking right at you. And the most famous one of which is "Stop Telling Women to Smile," and that's the name of her project. So I decided that I wanted to see if we could take her to another country because she'd only gone around the United States. And Mexico City is very bad in terms of public harassment of females. I mean, they have female-only subway cars and buses. There's a lot of physical touching as well as verbal harassment. So we took her to Mexico City and had her recreate it there. And then we created an interactive that basically, it did a couple things. It told the story of her trip. In a way, it's kind of like a travel log, but it was also the story of the almost 100 women that we spoke to. But beyond that, it's more universal because a lot of women deal with feeling unsafe as they walk around in public places, even in New York, which is relatively safe. I think it's never far from a woman's mind.
Can I ask you a question about a project like that? And then this goes for the one which you were talking about, like with Black Lives Matter. How do you deal with the fact, like when you're sympathetic to something, right? You're sympathetic to what someone is trying to do. And especially in video, like for lack of a better way of putting this, how do you not make it like schmaltzy and corny? Like how do you keep it from being, propaganda is sort of what I'm reaching for. Like, how do you make it compelling as story, Well,
in the case,
do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't think that we were risking it being schmaltzy in the case of the interactive about Mexico City.
I'm thinking more about the Black Lives Matter piece.
I don't think I'm gonna risk it being that schmaltzy just because we're gonna train a camera on somebody or a microphone and have them talk. It's really as simple as that, and having them tell a story. And some of them may speak in a schmaltzy way, and some of them may not. But it really just it's almost like the people involved, the people being profiled, are what shaped the story.
Right.
And I can see how it could be different if it was like a mini documentary we were doing.
Right,
and we had
right.
to cut things together, and there was music behind it.
You're giving us more information as you go.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's nothing like what I'm doing. But you think you got me, but you didn't.
There's plenty of time.
But I think that's a good question. And I mean, my answer, and I'm not sure it's a satisfactory one, is just to let the people speak. That said, I have a point of view. I mean, the point of view that I went into with the Mexico City piece was that street harassment is bad, and we want to tell the stories of these women. I don't think that's particularly controversial.
Right.
The opinion I have going into the story about Black Lives Matter protesters is that they're in the right, and the police state is in the wrong. And but that was one. I have a point of view on things, and the one thing that the internet at large, and particularly my jobs in digital media, allowed me to do is they let me have an opinion or express an opinion, either through my own words or through those of the people I worked with.
Right.
So I don't claim to be. I'll put it this way: if I was writing a reported piece, I would try and be fair and balanced about it. But if I'm working for an organization that has a particular point of view, we'll be fair, but it might not be as balanced. It might be very obvious about its bias towards
Right.
Or sympathy for a certain group or person.
Right. Tony, are you going to give us a preview of something special? Because Anna's being coy, so the pressure's on you.
Well, it's I don't know how special it is. I mean, I'm
But I won't do. Don't dial back expectations, man.
It's just a book, you know, which is interactive in a way. I mean,
Have you ever talked about your book publicly?
not very much. You know, a little bit.
Can we say this is
now
like
that
a,
yeah? I mean, it's almost finished, so I can like for a long time.
Okay.
Like for a long time, I was working on or not really working on a book that was sort of part of my public profile, and you still look on Wikipedia. It says I'm working on this book that I stopped working on.
You check your Wikipedia entry?
No, someone told me I was at another.
He's caught.
I don't. Only when I discover inaccuracies. But I was being.
You discovered the inaccuracies.
Well, I was being interviewed for a college paper at a different college, and the young journalist said, you know, she'd done her homework. She had read my Wikipedia page, and which I appreciated. And she said, so you know, so tell me about the book you're working on about post-war American literature, which was a book that I had intended to write about 15 years ago and abandoned a long time before that.
Did you
But
have
it's
a contract?
still, I had a contract. I paid
Did you
back
take the
advance.
advance?
I took it. I paid it back. It was very painful, but I don't know how we're talking about this.
Right,
guy.
sorry about
But
that.
anyway, it's you know, it's a book that either someone else will write or I'll write after I'm dead or something. But anyway, it was a little startled. But this book actually, it exists. I'm in the middle of revisions on it, and it's
Wow.
yeah.
So this is gonna be a thing.
It'll
This
be
is
out about a year from now.
Okay.
I think. And it's about criticism. It's sort of about why criticism matters as a kind of writing, as a way of thinking. It started out in a way as an attempt to clear up certain misunderstandings and misrepresentations that I always feel that you always get when you're a critic. It's actually
Like, for instance, that you don't affect the bottom line.
well, no, that you're out of touch with the audience, or you're just hating on everything, or you're just bitter and jealous, and you're a failed artist, and you know, I couldn't make these movies myself, so I just have to
Right.
you know, crap all over them.
Right.
It was actually, in a certain way, it was inspired by like a tweet that was aimed at me by Samuel L. Jackson.
You have to tell that story.
It's true. No,
I think I vaguely remember this.
It started as Twitter beef with Mace Windu, and
You're not winning that.
no, but you know, but I I wrote the book though, so
Yeah,
I'll have the last. No, I reviewed the Avengers, and it was like a mixed review. I didn't hate
a
the
mixed
Avengers,
movie.
but it's a mixed movie. I like some things like that.
Yeah.
So he sent up this tweet. He said, you know, everybody, we have to find A.O. Scott a new job, one he can actually do. And
Wait, are you sympathetic to him though?
Of course.
He busts his ass on this film.
Oh.
And then this guy spends a week
Whatever,
writing
yes.
about it.
That's that film. I mean, like, it was there were multiple
Yes.
people in the cast. I mean, he did it for
also,
the
look,
paycheck,
he had. I'm
probably.
sorry. He had. You know, not to get vulgar about it, but he had like, you know, I'm sure gross points in that movie, and it made $1 billion in
Right.
box office. I don't think I subtracted $1 from its gross. So, I think he's right.
Are you
But
going to
there
read
is-
the reviews of your book?
What?
Are you going to read the reviews of your book?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go on Amazon and write as many of them as I can. Under various aliases. But, yeah, no, and, you know, I'll tweet the good ones, too. That's what I
Right.
do.
No, because I actually think this is a real thing, and I think it actually gets into something that we all do, where the notion is there are people in the world who are making things, and we're then, maybe not so much you now,
Scrapping on it?
Yes, well, we're just
Or
sort
just
of
like
like sitting back and
picking
just
at it,
taking
yeah.
shots at it.
Oh, I've done plenty of that. I'm not doing it right now so much, but yeah.
And you think it's defensible?
I think it's defensible to
Yeah.
pick apart stuff. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I say that, but, you know, it's not being directed at me.
Right.
Right this very second, and I
Right.
might feel differently if it was, but
I think it is because it's something that everybody does. Like this book is not a defense of my job or of the profession of criticism so much as it is an attempt to kind of explain and analyze and dig into the activity of criticism, which is something that everybody does. You go to a movie and you know, you go out afterwards to the bar and you argue about it, or you just it turned into a kind of a book about how do we talk about taste and
Is it narrative? Like, do you take
no.
quite different? Okay, so it's not narrative. Okay.
no, it's a complete mess structurally.
Okay.
I think there's a difference between going after a person and questioning their like legitimacy as a human being,
Yeah.
Right.
and going after maybe something they produced. And it seems like
Oh, but
maybe
if you
Sam
work on
Jackson
something like
took it very personally.
I didn't
and
say-
maybe it was about maybe
There was nothing in there about him. There was nothing in there
Well,
about him.
then
But it was, but I think it was that. But I think you make a very good point, because when you produce something, whatever it is, you are putting it out in the world and inviting a certain kind of judgment, which you hope will be positive. But there shouldn't be anything that insulates or protects the work from judgment, because people believe. If I was gentle and sensitive about movies that I saw, I wouldn't be doing my job. People would read the reviews and say, well...
It's also ultimately not very respectful. I mean,
Right.
it's actually not
That's right.
respectful to actual
That's
work, in
absolutely
fact.
right.
Because what you're saying is, I don't take it serious.
And it's not personal. I mean, I don't know any of the
Right.
people who do this, and I on purpose,
Do you make a point not to know people?
Yeah.
I think that's very smart. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I don't
It gets very messy very quickly. You can
Right.
have just like one pleasant conversation with someone, and then you see something they've done, and it's just sticking in your head. Oh, he's such a nice guy, So.
You had an incident, though, and Tony, you're going to have to talk about this. Somebody several incidents, sorry, but you had a particular one I'm thinking about where one of the movie companies tweeted out a quote.
This is all Twitter.
But it wasn't your quote, was it?
I should just write a memoir of my life on Twitter. I guess. That's where all the interesting stuff
Right,
is happening,
on
not
Twitter.
at the New York Times. But no, it was very surreal, and I wrote a piece about it. But when I reviewed Inside Llewyn Davis, the Coen Brothers movie, which I liked a lot, and then I just tweeted there were at the end of December that year, there were a bunch of film critics getting into on social media getting into what I thought were really annoying arguments about Wolf of Wall Street and American Hustle and in very sort of film critic-y kind of
They were arguing on
pedantic
Twitter?
ways. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always a great place to argue.
Right, and posturing and
nuanced.
correcting each other and sort of forming their little factions and so I said, you guys keep fighting about this. I'm going to go listen to the Llewyn Davis soundtrack again, and so I got a email from the publicist on the film who was running the Oscar campaign, and she was like, the producer Scott Rudin wants to use your tweet in the newspaper. And I said, well, I don't really want to. I'm not sure I want to do that.
Right.
So no, 'cause it's just Twitter. It's not like I didn't write this in the paper. So, but then like the morning after Christmas, I
Wasn't it
walked
Sunday? It was like
downstairs.
the Sunday
Saturday.
too.
It was Saturday, and there's a whole page with like my little avatar picture, and the tweet, which had been changed because they took out the reference to the other movies, because during the Oscar campaign rules are you can't mention the competition. So it was just a completely doctored tweet of mine. But also it was so weird because it was going from
And it was in
social
the New
media-
York Times.
in the print,
Where
only
you
in the
work.
print New York
Right,
Times.
right,
though.
right, right.
It's like
Yeah.
somebody paid $75,000, I think is the rate for a
To
full
print a
page in this-
tweet.
to print a tweet. So,
Was the idea
And then-
Oscar voters are not on Twitter?
well, that's the idea, is that they're going to
Yeah.
go down to the end of the driveway in Beverly Hills, or send their gardener down to the driveway, and pick up the paper and open it up, and then I don't know what's supposed to happen. It didn't get nominated for or win any Oscars at all. So there's my clout.
Was it in the
right
form
there.
of a tweet? Like, did it look like
It was in the form. It looked like a tweet.
So that's why, because the
Yes.
Oscar voters had never seen a tweet. So
Right.
maybe they didn't.
No, it was blank space. It was a whole page of blank space, and then this little strip with this little picture of me, and then like these words, and it had even like the little star and the little arrows that indicate the favorites and the retweets.
Wow.
And then
Did
it
it
just
have a
went
check
great.
mark?
But then sort of there was the whole Twitter ethics seminar took place.
Right.
Where everyone is like, this is outrageous. It became this huge, and the public editor of the paper weighed in on it.
Really?
It became this
Were folks
completely
mad at
surreal.
the business aspect of the paper, the business people? Were people mad at the business people at the paper?
People were wondering about that, and it was because the paper, but there was a gray area there, because like the paper owns all the words I write in the paper,
Right.
and it has to pass through. There are people at the paper who make sure that the newspaper's words or my words in the newspaper aren't being misused. But if it's on Twitter, it did violate Twitter's guidelines. But,
Okay, you got him. There it is.
so I think maybe, I don't know, maybe Scott Rudin wasn't allowed to be on Twitter for a week or something. I don't think he even was.
Did you call them? Like, was this a thing?
Well, I said, I did, and then because the public editor called me, and actually I had the email that said like, I don't, you can't do that, and then that was a whole little scandal, and I don't know. I tried to figure out. I then wrote a piece in the magazine trying to figure out like what the hell this was all about, and I didn't really arrive at much of an answer. But.
Is it scary when Margaret Sullivan calls you?
Margaret Sullivan is the public editor,
Yeah.
and so if
I
Tony
just wonder if you're like a reporter at the
presumably,
Times and her name pops up in your inbox. And
You
you're like, oh, shit.
do not you do not want. Yeah.
So the idea is like, I guess if Tony, if you would assume you might have done something wrong, like readers complain about something Tony wrote, but not like I didn't like his review, like ethically.
Right.
Like did he violate some sort of movie ethics?
Yeah. I mean, and she's very fair and very scrupulous, but she's also very she's known to be very tough and to apply her standards, which I think are mostly very good and correct standards, pretty rigorously. So.
Anna, when you started Jezebel, I mean, you guys took people apart. I mean, that was a good part of what you did. Did you get tired of that?
Yeah, a little bit. That's probably why I quit. I mean, when Tony was talking about how he doesn't hobnob, I don't think he used that word, but with film industry people.
Good word, though.
One of the things when I
But wait, can I offer one addition? The interesting thing, and just so you guys notice, Anna came directly from women's magazines to Jezebel, and a good part of Jezebel was taking apart women's magazines.
Yes.
So it's a little
It was
different.
reaction to them.
Yes. So you knew some of these people, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, because I'd worked with them, and then people go to other magazines, and at that point, I probably knew someone who worked at most of the major women's magazines.
Right.
That doesn't mean they were close friends of mine, but I knew them.
And they knew who you were. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think they thought about me.
no, but I mean, like it wasn't like this strange person showed up and started saying, yeah,
no.
right.
So one of the things I decided when I was starting the site, which is to say before it actually launched, and I was figuring out what it was going to be, I decided I couldn't hang out with these people. I wasn't hanging out with them anyway.
Right.
But I wasn't going to go out and be in any circumstance where I might run into somebody who worked at one of these magazines for a couple of reasons. I wanted to feel free to say whatever I wanted, and for the staffers to feel free to say whatever they wanted. And I was afraid that if I came in contact with anybody, that I would experience empathy, which is a horrible thing to say. Like there was one woman who I knew who worked at Cosmopolitan, who was a pretty high up editor there, and I had gone and I'd gone to her house for dinner, like a small dinner party, and then about 5 months later, when the site started, I remember thinking, I can't email her ever again. Like I was also worried that she would get in trouble. If it was ever known that she was fraternizing with me, that she would get in trouble because. I was afraid because we were talking about things that were both in the magazines, but also some like inside baseball stuff that there would be angry HR departments who would be looking through people's emails, and I wouldn't put it past them, having worked for some of those companies.
Right.
Who's the mole? So I felt like I had to distance myself completely from anyone that worked in that industry in order to do it right. Like we couldn't be half-assed about it. If we were going to go after women's magazines or women's media, then we just had to go all out.
Just to give some history, what specifically were you guys going after?
I don't know where to start. I mean, everything about them. Their obsession with consumerism and their obsession with creating insecurities to then solve, and their obsession with sex and romance and celebrity, and the idea that women didn't have any interest beyond those things I just listed off. And the ways that they sold themselves and sold products, how unimaginative they were, how little they thought of their readers in terms of what they were providing and what they weren't providing, which was a lot of times like a rigorous, interesting discussions about stuff that didn't have to do with sex or romance. How they were totally homogenous in terms of the people they presented on the covers and inside the pages that tended to be all white women and assumed to be heterosexual. Again, it was like, you walk out in the street and you see a very, very different world than you see in the pages of these magazines. And like at that point, I was really pissed about it. So the site made sense because there was a lot of pent-up frustration having grown up in a culture where those sorts of magazines were taken very seriously. I think they were starting to be taken less seriously then because the internet was ascendant.
Right.
But that's how a lot of women in the United States, at least, learned what it is or how they should be female.
Right.
And I was pissed off about it. And I had also contributed to it. And I think there were a lot of other people who were pissed off about it because the readership grew pretty quickly. And I think that we were expressing something that was already out there.
Did you guys have people go to women's magazines from Jezebel?
No. Although there were women's magazines that started to try and court some of the staffers.
Right.
But this was years in. I mean, it was kind of a strange thing to go after them with such vehemence.
Right.
And really every day, because there were there were 10 a month. I mean, there were 10 different issues to go through and make fun of a month. It's almost like we had too much to go through. And again, the site had many other things on it besides the women's magazine stuff. But a couple of years into the site, we started to notice, or I started to suspect, that the women's magazines were reacting to what we were doing. And then what other sites like us that had popped up were doing. Because you just started seeing different topics being covered in them, either in their pages or on their websites.
Did that make you feel good or bad?
Well, I didn't know how to feel about it because I didn't know if I was crazy or not. Like I thought, am I making this up? Like all of a sudden they're talking about we're not going to Photoshop anymore. I mean, I didn't know whether this was really a reaction to what we were doing or not. And I wasn't so self-aggrandizing that I would say, of course.
Did you want to have impact? Did you like?
I wanted to make them irrelevant.
Yeah. Okay. So you did.
I mean, I'm not saying that we did, but that was like I'm going to make them. We're going to try and make them irrelevant,
right?
Or at least point out their irrelevancy. And so then they started mimicking us in some ways. This was years into it. And again, I didn't know whether I was making this up in my head or not. It was just hard for me to see it objectively. But I think, about 3 years in, one of the magazines contacted one of my staffers and asked her if she was interested in being like a deputy editor on one of their websites. It was so weird though, because we'd gone after them with such nastiness and cruelty. Again, we weren't going after editors. Like we weren't naming. Oh, we kind of went after Anna Wintour, but we weren't naming people specifically. It was like the collective product that we would mock. So yeah, they were approached. I wasn't. There have been a couple of times when maybe a women's magazine has asked me if I'd write something for them, and I'm like, didn't you see what I did?
Wait, can I just push you on that? I mean, doesn't that presume that there are not people in the magazines who are like you, who maybe are somewhat frustrated themselves?
There were a lot of them. Oh yeah, and there were when I worked for them.
Yeah.
I didn't blame the editors. I mean,
but I mean in terms of why they would approach you, and ask you to write for them, because maybe they kind of agree with some of the critique.
Maybe, but also as time went on, we stopped going after them as much because the point had been made.
Ah, okay, I understand.
I mean, it was hard to sustain that, at least for me. Like I started getting bored by it.
Right.
In the same way, I started getting bored by talking about fashion shows or it's like certain things I felt like we'd hammered home enough that anyone who was paying attention had received the message. And then I got bored and then I quit.
Right. Tony, do you have any expectation of impact at all? Like you talk about this thing of what criticism is for. Does that enter in your mind at all? I mean,
it's this sort of it's one of these sort of spectral ideas, and I don't actually think about it, and I'm suspicious of the idea. The word that gets attached to critics a lot, usually in hindsight and nostalgically, is authority. Critics are supposed to have authority. And that's something that I don't believe in, and I don't think it's a desirable thing, and I don't think it ever really existed, and I don't think its loss is any great loss.
Like Harold Bloom, like when you think about literature.
Yeah, or when you think about the New York Times theater critic which there's still certainly some power invested in, let's say, the restaurant critic and the theater critic.
Right.
But that has to do with the marketplace that they're working on. That Broadway Broadway theater is very, very small. The Manhattan restaurant world is very, very small, and the New York Times wields kind of disproportionate influence in those worlds, and can affect the fortunes of various enterprises. I think that I mean, I can't speak for Pete Wells or Ben Brantley, but I think that I would doubt very much that when they sit down to write, they think about, I'm going to shut this place down, or I'm going to make this place.
Yeah.
I think what you think about is what you always think about when you're writing is how am I going to make my thoughts clear? How am I going to figure out what I want to say? So I think much more about who might be reading than about who made the thing, or if it's going to make money, and you sort of measure your impact in how you feel you've been read and if you made yourself understood, and the emergence of social media and various forms of digital interactivity have changed that. I mean, I'm just old enough to kind of remember before there was very much of that, when I would still get like handwritten letters. I still get some in very like shaky hands, but now you can sort of, I don't know if it's impact, but you can get some sense, at least initially, of being read and being responded to.
So the interesting thing for that, and we're going to throw it out to questions in a little bit. We're not going to talk at you for this whole period. We're very interested. So you should start thinking about any questions you might have. Make the questions good. A lot of pressure. The interesting thing about that is, so I don't really write about art or magazines too much. But one of the things is like, to you guys talk about is when I go out and I talk about, I do a lot of writing about social issues. It's like, what impact do you expect to have?
Right.
And it's very difficult to explain to people that that's not what I was thinking about. Like that's not, like that can't, like probably none. You know what I mean? Like probably none, and yet I still enjoyed making the thing nonetheless.
Well, I think so, and I think if you wrote it with some idea of having, I mean, if you had written your reparations,
it spoiled the process.
It would spoil the process, and you'd just kind of be an asshole.
Yeah, you would be an asshole actually.
Well, you think, well, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to say something, when all you're ever really doing, or the writers who I like to read, who I trust and rely on, I always feel like I'm witnessing the process of thinking.
Yes,
they're encountering a problem and they're trying to figure it out.
Yes.
And the pieces of writing that I like are where you can see where that process is a little bit visible.
Right.
Which was the case, like with that piece of yours. You could see the question, the problem, the thought, and what you're doing, and all you're doing in a way, is trying to figure out, well, how do I make sense of this? How do I get this so that it's clear to me?
I'm going to take you with me to all of my talks.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Because I swear, I mean, what you exactly said. And in that sense, I think, and I don't know if you find this now, but I think like in making things, and I would take this outside of print. I think in making things in media, I experience it as a very selfish act.
Yeah.
And I think like that's a good thing.
I think that's where its integrity is.
Right.
Because you're doing it, you're trying to figure out, I mean, in my case, I've seen this movie, or if I'm not writing about a movie, there's some problem in the world of arts and culture, or some issue, and I just want to clarify it for myself. I want to take it apart, turn it over, and figure out what there is to say about it.
That's the best place to be in a media career, is when you can do that. I mean, the worst place for me historically was when I had to execute what other people wanted me to do.
Oh yeah.
And I had no passion for it, or it was hard to summon any. So
that's how I got fired several times.
because you were resentful.
Well, I mean, no, I wasn't. I was trying very hard. I was actually trying very. I thought, I think I can say this now. I worked at Time Magazine for. I came in 2005, and I was asked to leave in 07. I got laid off in early 07. And it was the summer, so I was there for roughly a year and a half, and I could not figure out how to write. And it was and I wanted to be able to, because I was going to be able to take care of my kid, and my wife was going to be okay, and everything. And I thought, I mean, quite frankly, at that point, God, it's sad to say this, but I felt like if I can write in any sort of way and have a family and live in New York, that would actually be a stunning success. That's it. That actually, would be, and I still had imagination, and I still obviously had ideas about things that would be cool to make. But okay, maybe those things won't get made. But if I could actually work and have a career writing words and asking questions, that wouldn't be a bad life. You know, but it was somebody I couldn't even get what they were doing. I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't quite
Was it a matter of like of the stuff they wanted you to write about, or of like the house style,
I think
or
the first thing is they were
ideas?
losing money. It's always a hard time when
Yeah.
you're losing money. I mean, I think that's the first. They were under pressure. So any public, and in every instance, folks were under money pressure. And so that immediately makes it hard. But I think a significant part of it was, I don't know. I would say, I'm tempted to say the house style, but I don't even know what that means. All I know is I'm at my best when I am writing about the thing that keeps me up at night. Like when I'm, I can't sleep, you know? So I guess I'll give to answer, just to participate, you know, like the thing I'm working on. I'm working on this thing. I hope you guys are okay. I'm talking to the Atlantic now. I hope you're okay with this. I won't give the whole house away. But I'm working on this thing about mass incarceration, right? And so the Atlantic likes to, you know, put its, you know, foot down on certain issues and say, okay, we're going to try to do something big about this. We're going to try to make some sort of statement about this. And you have to do something, you know, different. You know what I mean? That's like the creative sort of challenge. Okay, everybody's talking about mass incarceration. You know, what do you have to say that's different? And oh God, I can't tell you what's different. I'm sorry. I can't tell you what I think is different. I'm so sorry. Suffice to say, I did a ton of reading. And that moment when you realize that, oh, this is being talked about in every place in the world, in every outlet, and here is the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that folks are missing. And not only I've gone to a really dark place actually recently. Not only here is the thing that everyone is missing, here is the thing that everyone is underestimating. And frankly, here is the reason why it probably won't get fixed. It just says, so I won't tell you what I've discovered, but just to put this in plain terms. 1970, there were roughly about 600,000 people in all of our jails and prisons. Within about 10 or 15 years, I'm trying to make sure I have this right. We doubled it, and then we got up to 2 million. We're at 2 million now, okay? And maybe a little over 2 million. Every year, 600,000 people come out of our jails and prisons. In other words, the population that was the entire population of our entire carceral population is released every year out into the world. This sociologist calculated that that's roughly enough to fill all of the fast food jobs 5 times over in America. It's a huge, huge problem to get back to 1970. And even where 1970 was actually a huge, huge, huge problem because the ratio of incarceration for black to white was roughly about 6 to 1. So even if you go back to 1970, that was fucked up already. Basically, you're trying to get back to Jim Crow, and that would be considered a success if you could get back to, you know, Jim Crow levels of incarceration in this country. It'd be less people, but it still would be inherently racist. That's the sort of thing when you stumble upon where you're like, it's horrifying, and yet it's kind of beautiful at the same time. Why is it beautiful? It's beautiful as a storyteller. You know, you have to be like, I'm sorry to say that because they're real, you know, people. But at some point, you know, like you are, you know, crafting something. You are actually telling a story. And you do have to say something different. And when you realize the magnanimity, the bigness, it's a word I can pronounce, the bigness of the whole thing, I mean, it's like, oh, this is why this is a struggle. You know, that to me is like, you know, like the moment. That's the selfish moment, right? Like that's the thing that I didn't probably have the freedom to pursue before. Like I didn't really have time to report, to read in that sort of deep way, to stumble upon that thing where it's like, oh, I now know something. And that moment of revelation is like, I mean, that's only mine. That belongs to me.
You feel excited.
Yes.
Well, because then you get to communicate to other people.
Yes.
I don't have those moments very often, but
also, I know. Like, now I know. Like, I know why this is hard. I understand, have a deeper understanding of a problem out in the world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's almost like, in many ways, I experience it as a relief. Because it's like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. It's like, you know, I thought I was sick, and now I have a diagnosis. At least I can name it now. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's not the cure, but I can name what's going on here. I understand what's happening to my body now. That's a beautiful moment. I had those at Washington City paper occasionally. I never had them at any job until I came to the Atlantic.
I mean, I think in some ways, and I don't mean this as cynically as it sounds, but in some ways the whole apparatus of journalism is designed to minimize and to prevent those moments. and just partly because it depends on the churning out of an enormous quantity of information on a very fast
It's the
daily
velocity.
basis.
You think it's
I think it's partly the velocity, and it's partly just the sort of the assembly line nature of it, and the way that institutions, that control the flow of information and the production of knowledge, whether we're talking about newspapers or universities, tend to be, by nature, timid and bureaucratic and averse to risk or to experimentation. And it's very important to try to, and we're fortunate to find the places where you can push against the grain a little bit and allow those things to happen. Because it does, I think the paradox of the media in a way is that it's almost designed to prevent the truth from getting out, but the people who work inside the media work to prevent that from happening and to get it out. But it's always, I think, journalism is always in tension with itself, or the people working at journalistic outlets and organizations are always in some way in tension with the places that they're working.
And is this your first book, Tony? Is this going to be your first book?
Well, the first one I've actually written.
Only that. Yeah. Did you find yourself freer to find those sorts of moments in book writing?
Yeah, I very much so. Just partly because of the time and space and length. I mean, I write mostly for the daily and sometimes for the weekly sections of the paper. So it's just like I only have so long to think about any given thing. I better come up with that moment you're describing, like, within the hours between 7 in the morning and noon, right, on Wednesday, or to get as close as you can. So you're sort of working at speed, and you can use that as an excuse. You could say, well, this is the deepest and most profound and elegantly stated thought that I could do, to get it to the copy desk and into Friday's paper. So the book was a very different thing, and it was scary. It was hard because there wasn't any kind of like map or structure that would make it happen. The great thing about daily newspaper deadlines is that you just never miss it. You always make those deadlines because they just have this sort of objective reality. It's just going to happen. Whatever it's going to be, you're going to send it out, and it's going to go off the desk. So, there's a certain length, and there's certain you internalize the standards. You always know how far you can go. And then writing the book, it's like, well, it's whatever you want.
Right.
Did you take a leave?
No, I know. I just sort of wrote it in the, I would like get up in the morning, or I would write on Sunday, and it was slow, and sometimes it felt very. I made it feel as much like gardening or cooking or like making pottery or some kind of hobby rather than work.
We want to open it up a little bit and throw it out to questions. We do have a microphone. Yes. Okay, so we have one on each side. Okay, so questions. I have a ton more, so if you guys don't ask any, I'm going to start calling on people in the audience like it's my class and asking you guys. There's one in the back right there. Oh, okay, before that, we have one over here. Okay.
Hi. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on sponsored content and native advertising, but more importantly, what the upside is. Like, it's very easy to be cynical and negative about essentially being paid to say there's issues sponsored by Pantene, but is there some kind of trajectory or positive silver lining to be found in those opportunities?
So, wow. Here's the thing. I got my start at a publication whose business model was effectively taking ads from, futons, classifieds, and porn. And that was our business. That was how how we stayed in business. I mean, we took and this is before Craigslist, right, which just decimated alternative newspapers. Much more than I would say than it did daily newspapers. We were a place that I guess in a large respect, our advertising model was things that people couldn't advertise other places. Again, a lot of this is not pre-internet, but pre-big internet. I say that to say, I don't know that it's ever been clean, I think it's always been a problem to figure out, and I'll just speak for my business, to figure out how to tell long, deep narrative storytelling and fund it. I'm going to get this controversy wrong, and Sarah, you might remember this well. Do you remember what happened with the Magazines and Publishers Clearinghouse? Okay, it used to be, there was some funding mechanism where they would basically make it look like they had more subscriptions than they actually had through Publishers Clearinghouse. I think they were basically selling a sweepstakes, and people would subscribe, and it would look like they had more numbers than they had, and then they could go sell this to advertisers.
The ad rates, yeah.
Do you remember this? Do you understand? Am I explaining this right?
Pretty much, I think.
Okay. And there was a huge court case over this, and it actually hurt magazines when they, weren't able to do it. But basically, it was kind of fraudulent. They were actually advertising as a sweepstakes, and somebody right now on Twitter is explaining this better than I am and pointing out how I'm all wrong about this. But I think I got the basics right. And what I'm trying to say is, I don't know that it's ever been clean. I don't know that it's ever been clean. And so I think it's always, been a problem. Would I like it? Much, much better, if things were, completely, on the up and transparent. I would. But at the same time, I desperately want this world to exist. I really, really do. I want to have the privilege, the incredible, incredible privilege of somebody telling me, okay, you go and you just think about mass incarceration for the next 6 months and then come back with something. Tell us something, about the world that we're missing. I want, someone to say, to be able to fire off an email and say, you know what, I think the Atlantic should put, reparations on its cover. And them saying, okay, that's cool, now you go figure out how to do it. Like that's tremendous, This is the way it gets done, in many, increasingly in a lot of media places. I don't know if that's a satisfactory ethical answer, but you guys got thoughts? You got thoughts?
My thought only is that I try not to think about sponsored content.
Wow.
Do
you guys do any?
I don't know, actually.
You really try not to think about it?
Yeah, I'm just I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Don't involve me.
Right.
And I'm sure at some point I will be forced to be involved in that. And
what's your official title?
I'm editor of Digital Voices, which is kind of vague, which is kind of how I like it.
Right.
It can mean a lot of things, but yeah, I try not to think about sponsored content because the last time I worked on the web before this, it didn't exist.
Right.
And that was only 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Right. Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about what do you think about the relations to your commenters, like you.
Oh.
You have the Horde, and you have the Jazzies, and you have like Samuel L. Jackson and everything. But but how do you? Because the Horde was a successful story until like 2 years ago. I don't know. What do you think? The Jazzies, they are very vocal about many subjects. And how do you cultivate and how do you take advantage of a good group of commenters?
You have the best.
Ta-Nehisi, it seemed like you actually worked really hard to make your commenters into a kind of a
Yeah, so much so that en fait, moi je connais un professeur de français. My French professor came from my comments. Came out of my comments. That's how I got my first French. Un professeur privé. Un professeur. Désolé, Catherine. Un professeur. C'est féminin. That's how I got my first French professor. That's crazy, isn't it? That's insane. I actually got a French tutor out of my comment section. That's how good it was. And Kathleen was actually one of our moderators for a long time also. Here's what I'll say. It's actually very, very sad because I think interactions between writers and communities have a lot more potential than what's being exploited right now, what's being done right now. When I was working on the case for reparations, and I'm actually scared because I think I'm going to suffer in my journalism, from here on out. I benefited so much from my commenters. My commenters would tell me, "Oh, you're thinking about this. Have you read this?" A disproportionate number of them, like Kathleen, turned out to be grad students, who might be studying X, Y, and Z. And when I didn't have, for instance, access to JSTOR, they would send me papers. That I should check out. Seriously. I'll never forget, I was having this debate back and forth, much to my chagrin, with the great Andrew Sullivan, about race and intelligence. And this cat sent me this thing, this evaluation of the bell curve that had been done, all these years ago. And the actual science says, you got to read this. This will help you out, with X, Y, and Z. It really, 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 turned, my writing, into almost, I wouldn't say a communal effort, but I had like a chorus. You know what I mean? And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. one of the problems that happened, though, was the Atlantic became more successful. I got more readers. And that meant that it just became overwhelming. It just became totally overwhelming. I mean, there was a point when, it might be 30 people, and okay, I can talk back and forth with 30 people. I can, you can make a community, but when you start getting masses, and social media, I would say, like when I mean, I know Twitter was around, but when Twitter really, like I would say about 2010, 2000, it started to get, because people would tweet it out, now more people are coming in. And I think actually to have an effective community, what you need is fences. You need fences, and people on the internet don't want to hear that. There's this belief on, I don't know where this came from. I don't know what happened. Maybe it went along with the idea of free content, but there's this belief on the internet that I should be able to speak about what you're writing, and I should be able to say whatever I want to say, not on Twitter, but at the publication that you work in your house. So you're having a dinner party. I should be invited to your dinner party. And I should be able to insult you, the food, your husband, your wife, and everyone there.
Exactly.
I should be able to do that, And so, like, what somebody would say, oh, it's just the internet. But see, you can't have it both ways, right? Like, either we're going to take the internet seriously or we're not. And if we're going to take it seriously, then I have to treat a virtual space like I would treat a real space. And Kathleen knows, I used to say this, online. Like, this is, a dinner party. That's what this is. This is a dinner party, and you should think about it this way. I mean, we always go through this, well, common spaces don't get respected. People don't respect what's on the internet. Okay, well, let's treat it, with the respect that it actually deserves then, And, you get this, so does that mean that there's going to be some sort of bias? Yes, there is. There's also bias in who I invite to my dinner party. You're not going to get the broad spectrum of humanity at my dinner party. You're not going to have, I'm sorry, there's not going to be like 5 guys from the Tea Party there. There probably won't be anybody from the Tea Party there. That's what it is. But I'm not playing, my claim here is not that I give you an objective representation of political opinion across the internet. That's not what I'm giving you. I'm a liberal. I write like a liberal. My audience is probably going to skew liberal. Yes, it will. The comments will probably say, yes, they will. Yes, they will. And I hope, for the people that come and read, what I have to say, that the community that's there, enhances that experience a little bit. That's my hope. That's my hope. And it's very, very sad to me because I feel like we have not quite made, and you can help me out on this. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like we have not quite, the technology has not quite caught up with what it could be, I guess what I'm saying.
Of comments?
Yeah.
I used to pay attention to comments. Not just the ones on the site I ran. I would read the comments on your, I don't want to say your site, on your blog.
Right.
And I would usually actually wait till the end of the day to go read them.
You're making me so sad.
Well, it's because then I'd be like in bed on my iPhone, and kind of taking them in when other distractions were away. And it did feel like a community, and that's why it was really fun to read them. I think we had a bit of a community. Oh, we had a big community. I mean, we had a very engaged comment section. I think I told you this the other day. That drove me crazy, even though I knew that I...
Wait, I don't think you did.
Well, what I'm going to get to, I think I told you the other day.
Okay.
But we had a very vibrant, opinionated group of mostly women who commented on every single thing we posted, and would sometimes comment when we hadn't posted something new, and had relationships with one another, and fought with one another, and then fought with us. But the difference between our commenters and yours, at least then, because I don't look at the comments on Jezebel now, after I left the website, I'm like, I'm never reading them again. The difference was that your readers did not behave as if in ways in which they felt, I'm trying to think how to put this. Our readers thought they could do our jobs better than we could. That was like a subtext of some of the loudest people. They were good commenters, they were smart, they could be funny, but there was always a subtext of, I don't know, we could do our job. They would always kind of pick at little things we did. Your commenters didn't do that. So they drove me crazy because there were, I was working my ass off 18 hours a day. And there was actually one time when I thought, you know what, I'm going to give the site over to the commenters for one day. I'm going to pick 5 of the most obnoxious assholes and give them the keys to the kingdom. No, I didn't.
You should have done that.
Give them the keys to the kingdom, and then you'll see how fucking easy it isn't.
Yeah, it's not
because we were putting up 80 pieces of content a day. I didn't do that because I thought that would be legitimizing them in some way, even though they would have failed spectacularly and it would have been
But they might not have realized how spectacular they failed. That's always the danger.
That's true. They wouldn't have been able to do it.
This is great. Look what we're doing.
But I don't feel wholly negatively about the commenters on Jezebel back then because what you could see happening what you could see happening, which was very exciting, was that there were a lot of women, some of them younger than others, who felt like they were finding their voices in a certain community. And I actually saw many of them go from their day jobs, which could have been any number of things, and they became professional writers. Like they were practicing writing, they were practicing argument, they were practicing getting along or not getting along, they were practicing critical thinking, and some of them are now professional writers, who I now know. So that was a great thing. That was a great outgrowth of the comment community, but I think that I'll always kind of feel irritated by the "we can do your job better than you" stuff, because all we did on that site was work our butts off.
Why didn't you just kick those people off the site? I mean, that's a very dictatorial, anti-internet thing to say.
Because no one ever really came out and said it that way. Like I had certain rules, like if you come on and say racist, sexist stuff, you get booted. But I really felt like I had to, if I had banned everyone that irritated me at any given moment, there would be very few commenters left. And also there was a certain threat to it. Like if there was a popular commenter, but she was really kind of difficult, and you banned her, like if she went over the line, you banned her, there'd be this uproar. They would be in the comments of every other post saying, "Where's so and so?" I mean, it was a psychodrama. It was crazy.
So we it's very interesting because we managed all of that. I mean, that was what you had to manage. You say, okay, so you can't. That's in that thread over there. And oh my God, we one of the things we did was we had to open it up and have an open thread every. We used to do this.
Yeah.
Remember, Kathleen? We had an open thread every day, and it was like, okay, so you got beef with me or whatever. You can go here, and now you guys, this is your sewer to say all the horrible things that you wanted to say and stab each other as much as you want. But you're right. I mean, I think like what you were talking about in terms of like the breeding ground. Our politics out of it, Yoni Applebaum, started off as a commenter. Right. Started off as a commenter. Now he's my editor. Yeah. I mean, that's like incredible.
But you probably got great story ideas, as did we, from our commenters.
Oh
watching discussions being fleshed out because they're collectively more intelligent than we were was amazing.
Right, no, it's true.
But one thing I had forgotten to say was that at the time, though, what we didn't have were abusive, like really abusive outsiders coming in.
Yes.
Like it was a contained little, ecosystem in a way.
Yes.
And yes, people could act up and be assholes, and there would be, as I said, psychodramas. But there weren't men coming in posting gifs of rapes.
Right. Which actually has
which happened to the site a couple years ago after I had left. We didn't have any of that. I mean,
is that because of the growth? Is that like?
I think so. I think so.
Well, and I think it's also the defense. I mean, I think it's the point that you were making, and I mean, it's in a way a problem that we have. And we do have moderated comments and fairly strict rules of moderation, but it's kind of just a problem of scale. There's if it's a community, which I've never gotten the sense that it necessarily is, it's such a big. It's more like the community of commuters at Grand Central Station at 6 o'clock. Like a lot of people doing the same thing, but there's not necessarily the sort of the adhesiveness.
I think it would have to be somebody's job. I think if you were it would have to be somebody's job. Somebody would have to think a lot about the technology. And not just somebody's job in the sense of, this comment was really interesting, let me highlight this. I mean, it would actually have to be something a little more sophisticated than that. And that
we had that, though. We had the comment moderator who basically sat, and they all knew her and they trusted her, which is why she was picked to do it. And it was still overwhelming for her.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. You might have to have like 5 people.
I think it's actually doable. I really do. I think like if it was that person paid?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she became the weekend editor. Like because she I trusted her.
Right.
She had to deal with stuff. But I actually enjoy the New York Times comments because there's a certain
I do too. I read the New York Times.
demographic sometimes that pops up there that's very charming.
It's not quite a community.
Old people.
I do.
It isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And
sorry about that. We got distracted about it. This is a very interesting question. I'm sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Okay. This question is for Anna. What can you say about how the tool or how the medium affects the story and affects the storytelling?
That's why you're here.
What do you mean by tool?
Like the digital tool that you're using, whether it's just a writing story, whether it's a video with audio piece, whether it's something fun and interactive. How does that affect the story, and even how do you decide what tool to use?
This isn't going to be a very good answer because it's not well thought out when I do it. It's more what my instinct says. Like, for example, the story that I was talking about or skirting around about Black Lives Matter, there actually won't be any video. It'll be just audio. because I feel like that's more important in that story than seeing people's faces.
But where's that, like, what, so if I can push you on this, where does that come from?
Where does that come from?
Like, why do you feel that way?
Because it's what I think will be the most powerful thing. It's what I personally believe would be the most powerful
But what's
thing, or maybe
behind
the
that?
thing,
Like, what
or maybe
would
the
make
thing that I
you-
want to see.
What would motivate that belief? Where would that come from? And if you want to talk about like a piece that's not out there right now, that might help.
Well, I mean,
you
it might be that there's plenty of video of the various protests around the country.
Right.
That we all know what that footage looks like.
Right.
That we've all also seen footage of people sitting in a studio talking to a camera.
Right.
That perhaps if we're forced to listen to their voices, we'll hear something different. I think that's, but and I felt differently about the story about the women in Mexico City. I wanted it to be as in your face as the posters that the artist had created. I wanted them looking at the camera and telling the camera what gets said to them on a daily basis. I asked them to sometimes mimic it, the insults that are hurled their way, and because I felt that would be the most powerful way to do it. But I hate saying it's instinct because that sounds touchy-feely. And like I'm avoiding the question, but I'm not. It really is just what do I think would be most powerful for a particular story, and there may be things that haven't been invented yet, like techniques of storytelling, digital storytelling, that I would latch onto or feel that would be applicable if I even knew that they existed, but they don't. I mean, the perfect thing for the best thing for me would be if I could find a totally new way to tell stories on the internet that hasn't been done.
Right.
I don't think I've gotten there yet, but that's kind of my goal.
I would love to hear from you, Mr. Scott, answer that same question, the future of digital storytelling for you as the critic.
It's a very good, because I think that, as Anna was saying, there's a lot still to be invented, and there are, I mean, with film criticism in particular, there's enormous potential that didn't exist until very, very recently, except, on some TV shows like the Siskel and Ebert show, where you could incorporate, some of the stuff that you're actually talking about, and show instead of just describing. That's still, there are some people who are, I mean, I did a bunch of like video essays on classic films, a couple hundred of them that were called the Critics' Picks, where we just took a very broad kind of fair use assumption, and just I had a producer who would rip whatever scenes from the commercial DVDs he wanted, and we never had a problem, and they were about 2 and 3 minutes long, and it was really fun and very challenging to think, well, how would I do this? And one thing we discovered was it was fewer and fewer words. Like, we would start out and they'd be very heavily scripted, and there'd be a lot of sort of explanation of what's going on here and how this is working, and then you realize that the images could do some of the work if you just set it up well. The problem with that is rights, is that there's a lot of, there are intellectual property complaints. I mean, there are a couple of, I think, really brilliant makers of these sort of video essays on films. Some of them have been banned from YouTube because of copyright complaints. So in a way, that's a bit of an obstacle. But I think that there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be explored in just generally in the discussion of culture and in criticism. I mean, David Carr and I were trying to do this with this Sweet Spot video that we had, but it's going to take a lot of experimentation. I think that there are now, and it doesn't always turn out to be the newest or fanciest or most elaborate thing. I mean, I think right now, podcasting is in a bit of a flowering. So you can go over to Grantland and listen to Alex Papademos and Wesley Morris or the other people there, and they have a bunch of pop culture podcasts that are, I mean, that's criticism and it's informal and it's conversational. A lot of times it's a lot of fun. So I think that it's a matter of sort of the willingness of individuals and of the places that employ them to make the time and space and be willing to experiment, because you're gonna there will, I think, be a lot of trial and error, and a lot of adaptation and learning. I'm just like I'm you know, I did not set out ever to be an on-camera person. You know, I'm a writer for a reason, but you
I could see you doing something like being a DJ and sampling different things and by
it makes one of us, but.
the combination that you see the connections that the rest of us don't see between different films.
And that's
Yeah,
part of the job, right?
no, it's part of it, and you know, you can do that you learn to do that in writing, and then, I mean, it's also just often more collaborative. I mean, that I don't know how to cut video. I don't know how to shoot, and
You call yourself a film critic.
yes, I do. I don't call myself a filmmaker of any
What do
kind.
you guys, what I'm interested in actually, with both questions, which brought up something for me, is the idea of this story behind the storytelling. For example, part of the interactive about Mexico City, what that incorporated was the artist Tatiana drawing one of the portraits, and we put a GoPro over her shoulder so we could watch her or film her drawing, and then we sped it up so that on the interactive you can see her artistic process. You see her drawing. I mean, you see maybe 3 hours compressed into maybe 45 seconds. Have you ever thought of writing about the experience of putting together the reparations piece, for example?
Yeah.
And maybe it sounds like a little narcissistic, but I do think there might be an audience out there who wants to hear about the story behind the storytelling.
No, I think that's true. And when I did, I wrote, what did I do? I did
I did like the bibliography.
I did like the bibliography. So
Yeah.
I went through all
Yeah.
of it. But you know what that was about? And I'm going through this right now. That was about the fact that there were just tons of scholars who had written things that contributed to that. And magazines as they exist now, and I guess to some extent even in newspapers, there's no ability to credit other people who you're not quoting, but who help shape what you're doing. So for me, it was more about saying, I read this and this person had done this and this actually contributed a lot to the work. But I do think, I struggle with that too. Like, is it narcissistic? You know what I
It
mean?
might be
To
a little
do
bit,
that.
but it also might be interesting. Like, for example, I had to look at a lot of photos when I ran Jezebel, like
Right.
a lot of Getty and AP and Reuters images, pieces of photojournalism. I would often find a photo that would be so striking. I mean, that had been taken hours before. I was only looking at stuff that had been recently uploaded. And I would want the ability to like hover my cursor, not over just the person who was in the foreground, but every aspect in the photo, and have the photographer tell me.
How'd you
like,
do that?
What time did you take that photo
right,
exactly?
right,
What was
right.
the light like?
Right.
You know, what camera did you
Right.
use? What was that little girl in the corner actually doing?
Yeah, I would
you
love to know
like
that.
that sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
to know what it was like to be them as they
Yeah.
did their job. I don't know if it's possible to do that, but I would love to experience photography that way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the paper is doing more and more of that, because I think there's this idea that one thing that readers want. That, I mean, in a way, the sweet spot was.
I'm sorry, I
was an
have to
example
interject
about
this
that.
too. Been on all these panels about David, and there was one with Jill Abramson. She said he had this idea to live cast the New York Times newsroom.
Yeah.
That was the thing he wanted. He thought it was like would be a great show for everybody to see. Just a live cast to do like.
No, and we would do like man on the street walkthroughs. Like we would
Right.
we shot the sweet spot always in the cafeteria, which was David's idea, not on the set. So the idea is, here we are at the paper, just, you know, the conceit was sort of sitting around bullshitting in the cafeteria. But then sometimes we would go down and like we'd walk through the newsroom and ask people, you know, what they thought what their guilty pleasure was, or what.
Did you warn them?
Yeah, and we would send out an email and say, hey, we're going to come through if anyone
Right.
wants to talk. We wouldn't ambush anybody.
That would have been awesome, though.
But it was kind of fun, and there were some that was pretty funny. One of the ones that was my favorite was, we asked like for hidden talent. So we just went through and we found like, you know, people who were photo clerks who had like written graphic novels,
Are you
or
serious?
who were like, you know, karaoke singers or belly dancers, and they were just like they would
Any belly
come out
dancers
from
at the
behind
New
their
York Times?
desk, and yeah.
No, there are belly dancers there.
I mean, they were dressed in their work clothes,
Oh, okay, right.
but they had the moves.
Okay, we have a ton of questions all of a sudden. Okay.
Hey, so when you guys particularly Anna, you've gone fully from the world of print words to the world of interactive and multimedia. Ta-Nehisi, you had that documentary accompanying the case for reparations. Tony, you're talking about some of your multimedia work. When I went from print to TV, what was most daunting was just how much more work it is. That you put in 10 times as much work to get the same amount of product. And how do you deal with, number one, that workload? How do you deal with the difference in that workload and what it does to the quantity of stories you can tell? But then also, Ta-Nehisi, you talk a lot about film criticism on Twitter, and trying to be original with the shots. You bash on Chris Nolan or whomever, and you say these people aren't being.
I like Chris Nolan.
But this idea that that how do you actually make sure that you're going from print to multimedia? How do you make sure that you actually have something original in the way that you did when you were in print?
Well, Twitter's my opportunity to not have to think about that. I mean, that's like, just like a playground as far as I'm concerned. Although I'm off right now. I mean, I'm still on, but I'm off because I'm writing, and I feel like I gotta. And I actually miss it. It's weird. I actually miss being on Twitter. Like I'm missing it right now because I'm not tweeting, and I'm like.
When did you stop tweeting?
I had to stop like a week ago because I'm writing, and I gotta really like bad.
You stopped a few times, right?
But I didn't leave. That's the difference. I didn't leave. I didn't leave this
Good.
time. I just stopped. I had to stop, which is I'm actually missing it. I think I'll start drinking more or something.
That's a dangerous combination, though.
Oh, I know.
No, I'm on Twitter. I'll leave. I'll stop.
Oh, you drink
yes,
instead.
yes, one or the
Yeah,
other.
good.
Scandal has
One or the
unfolded
other.
because of something
Yeah.
someone drunk on Twitter said.
Really?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe they didn't admit it, but
Let's talk about that over dinner.
yeah.
So I actually, I don't know how you guys feel, but I actually find writing to be an incredible amount of work. I mean, I was shocked when we went to shoot in Chicago, like how much work video is. It is a lot of work, but oh my God, the amount of time, for instance, it takes to get a lead, usually for me, is insane. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I am right. Okay. I can't, and it's frustrating. I mean, I can struggle over a opening sentence, which is always so important. Like, I'm one of these writers, I don't know if you guys are like this, but I'm one of these writers where I can't, like, the opening is so important because then I feel like I have, like, for me, like, writing is like you're out in the Pacific Ocean and you just decide to jump in. And the lead or the opening section is, okay, there's the beacon. I know where I'm at now. At least I can go back there and know what this was supposed to be as I, go and explore other things as I write and try to find things. That is a tremendous amount of work. I mean, it's the hardest thing for me in the world. I mean, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult. To say nothing of the actual reporting and the time you spend, actually, talking to people. I mean, talk to somebody for like 2 hours, and you might like only quote like what, 3 or 4 sentences out of all of that. I mean, it is. It's pretty ridiculous. So I don't know. I don't know. I found video to be more work. Do you find video to be more work than writing?
No, but I have a more fraught relationship with writing than you do. Like, I dislike it more than you do. and so I find it hard in that respect. But also, the problem for me with writing is that oftentimes when I was doing it more frequently, I had to do it a lot. And that was stressful to me. Whereas, working on an interactive project might take me 3 months. Like, it feels more calm, and also it's more collaborative. So I actually feel like it's less work. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that
No,
publicly.
I have the same because I have the same feeling about writing. I mean, it's difficult and it's kind of all-consuming, and you're in this sort of existential wilderness. And one of the reasons that I've enjoyed doing video and TV when I did it is because it didn't feel like work in the same way. I mean, I did, I was co-host of the last iteration of the At the Movies, the old Siskel and Ebert show, and that was a lot of fun. And it was like, well, we wrote some of the scripted copy, but it was like 75 words.
That didn't feel like work.
And it had, well, not in the same way. I mean, because it had, and most of what we did, and most of what was good, and like the less writing there was, the better. So it's like, oh, this is just talking. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are skills you have to learn. Like you have to learn to sit a certain way, and
Right.
like sit on the, and not look too frightening or disheveled.
Right. I haven't figured that out yet.
And that's a hard one. But on the other hand, that like not to offend, but like the standards for film critics on television in that regard. somewhat low. So, you can get away with being the best-looking film critic.
Right. Okay, so who am I going? Is this back here? Okay, all right.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, after her.
Hi.
You after.
My question, you talked before about impact and not thinking about impact of whatever you're working on. I'm wondering about if you think about impact in terms of engagement, in terms of the response you're going to get via social media or page views or any kind of engagement
You know
levels.
what? I hope for that. I hope for it. It's good when it happens, but I think that could be deeply corrupting.
Yeah.
It can be
It
deeply,
is.
deeply corrupting.
Well-
I mean, I hate to go back to this, but like, when we were going to do this reparations thing, it was like, oh, come on, this has been talked about to death. Nobody's even heard this word since the Dave Chappelle skit. Come on. Who wants to talk about this? I mean, this is like something now we, in the house, we were deeply, deeply compelled about it. I don't want to misrepresent what's going on, but no one, it was not the feeling that, everybody is going to want to hear about this. I mean, even thinking about everyone's talking about mass incarceration. You're going to be special? Well, yeah, we think we're special. Yeah, we think we're going to say something, but you can't
You
get too
can't
far.
reverse engineer it.
Yeah, no, you
say,
can't.
Well,
Ooh,
we're going
man,
to make
you
a
can't.
huge impact. Because often you're wrong.
That's right. That's exactly it.
To be wrong, I had it happen a couple times to me in the last year where there was something I was working on that editors and I planned on was going to be huge, and we put all the architecture together to make it a big social media event, and 12 people cared. And then there were other things that you don't, and some of them are just ridiculous. Like I reviewed that terrible Adam Sandler movie where he goes to Africa with Drew Barrymore.
Oh, no.
Right? And I spent 45 minutes writing that review. It was 500 words. It was one of the worst movies I'd ever seen. And I was not going to give it any more time. I just wanted to write it in less time than it had taken me to watch it. And preserve some of my dignity that way. So that review was the largest driver of traffic to the New York Times website for
Get outta
36
here.
hours. And nobody knew. And the social media people were like, what's happening?
What do you think it was?
I don't know. I was a little embarrassed because it's it's not it's not the Ukraine.
Well, but you probably insulted the movie in a very creative,
Yes.
especially creative
well,
way.
yeah, no, it was like a funny. It was just the
Yeah.
kind of review that people like to
Yeah.
read because it takes you about even shorter. Like the time commitment keeps shrinking. So if it took me 45 minutes to write it and 2 hours to watch the movie, it takes someone a minute and a half to read it. And there were some funny lines. It had a ratings tag that will this movie is rated PG
Yeah, that's
because it'll
great.
make your children stupid. And so I just I got the big laughs. But it was you couldn't sit down and say, okay, how are we going to get a lot of traffic to the site? All right, Tony, you go see this Adam Sandler movie, and you write this review, and we'll blow it up.
And that's what a lot of business people in digital media don't get. They really think you can reverse engineer it. I mean, one of the most, and this was kind of depressing, one of the most depressing moments at Jezebel with regards to what got traffic and what didn't was very early on in the life of the site. It was a month and a half into it, and one of the staffers at Gawker Media was leaving the company, and so there was a party for him. This was on a school night. It was probably a Thursday night, and people at that company at the time in 2007 partied a lot because there were young people and they had appetites for large amounts of alcohol. And when you're around that, like me, you maybe forget to not imbibe so much. So the next day, I was horribly hungover, as was the entire staff of like the other two people at that time. the three of us were horribly hungover, but I'm the oldest one, so I have the worst hangover. And I couldn't, I woke up and knew that I wasn't going to be able to edit copy, that I wasn't going to be able to write. I mean, I could hardly function. So I told the other staffers, the other two, that we were going to just post pictures all day long. Because I could do that. I could look at pictures and upload them and give credit and whatever. And this was also in an era where like you could fuck around at Gawker Media a little bit. Like I don't think that Nick would ever put up with that now. A day of pictures. So we just put up pictures of like celebrities and like animals. And the traffic on the day was 3 times as high as it was any other day. When we had like poured our heart and soul into like I don't know, 25 posts about, but it was really depressing. And people would make assumptions about the site. Oh, you guys, you're all about X, Y, and Z. And I'd say, well, if you look at the traffic, actually, the posts that do the best are the ones about like fashion or celebrity. They're not the ones about gender politics. I realized that was the air that we gave off, and that's fine. But like that was actually not what was driving the traffic to the site. But the day of pictures, the hangover day of pictures was really, really depressing to me. But what I was going to say about the reparations piece, and I think that you can't reverse engineer things, but I do think that if you go to a story with a real curiosity and interest and passion for it, that it's contagious. That it it comes out in the writing, and that is sometimes, it's shared by the readers, and maybe it'll explode, in certain terms of traffic.
Maybe not though.
But maybe not. But like oftentimes the ones that do, there's a feeling behind it, that the writer or editor are both.
Well, and that it's going to take the reader someplace new. There's so many kind of virtually identical, quick, hot takes on any number of topics in 800 or 1,000 words or whatever. And if you have, something that is clearly larger and that also doesn't, with that piece, what I love about it too is it doesn't give you everything right away. Like you have to go into that piece and figure out where you're going to go. And that's a very exciting and not all that common reading experience.
So here's one of the two things, and I'm going to try to get this right, just to follow up. This is one of the one bit of science we did get out of this at The Atlantic. I think I have this right. The things that did the most for us were really quick newsy things that would like write something happened in, traffic-wise, or like really deep cover stories. Yeah. It wasn't the middle stuff. It was either, okay, real quick, I can consume this, which is very interesting, or something where, okay, we're putting our foot down. You have to read this. This is X, Y, and Z, But I don't even know that you can follow that, too. You can't really like go by that too much, right? Because you can write 10,000 words and it can suck. You know what I mean? Or it can be great and maybe no one wants to read
about that. But that's good.
That,
I think it's the unpredictability is a good thing.
Right,
it's like in Hollywood, if they figured out what movies, and they've been trying for 100 years to anticipate the public taste and engineer things that they're sure will be hits, and they're trying it now with all of these franchise movies. Mm-hmm. And then, but it, the public, thank God, is unpredictable. The culture's still in motion.
Right. Here. I haven't forgot about you. Don't worry. He has the mic. Sorry. We'll get you right after him. Promise.
Yeah. So you mentioned with your you said that Samuel L. Jackson got you in a tweet and got a lot of attention for the tweet, but you wrote the book. So you kind of get to have the last say in that view of the world. But do you feel with new digital media that way of creating the record, or like what you say ends up being like creating a record on the subject changes? Like you might have had the best 1,000 words on it, but you didn't have the best Vine, and now it just like your words are forgotten. Does that impact the way you look at your work?
Oh gosh.
I hope not.
It's because it's a good question about sort of what the record is, and I think one thing that's very clear is like that the record is an enormous archive of material that's coming from all different places. We still think of ourselves down the street as the paper of record. None of us is quite sure what that means. But I think, again, it's sort of like the impact question. Like if you think about this, whatever you're writing, if you think about its lasting, if you sit down to write and say, well, what will, in 100 years, what will people say about this? You would just be paralyzed. You hope, right, that some of what you say sticks to something, but it's, but I think you kind of have to banish it from your mind. For me at least, I always just have to be like the person sitting at my desk trying to work it out in my own head, and for maybe like a dozen other people that I happen to be thinking of, some friends of mine or other writers who I know. Sometimes I'll think actually like, oh, I wonder what Ta-Nehisi would think about this. But it's always like a small number of specific people who I hope might pay attention to it or enjoy it. And then anything else that happens, I don't, you make it as good as you can, and then the deadline's there, and it's not yours anymore.
Hi, Mr. Scott, I wanted to ask you a question. As the, I'd love to know more about your process as a film critic, your working process, particularly in your position as the lead critic for the Times. I'd be curious to know, do you have the power to pick the films that you review? When do you see them? Do you see them at a particular time of day? Do you see them in screening rooms versus on DVD or stream?
So the short, we have, we review as close to all of the movies that are released in a given year as we can. So that's that, and it's been hovering around like 900 movies a year, and just the process is we get a schedule of releases usually about 3 or 4 weeks ahead. And I have a co-chief critic, Manola Dargis, and she and I basically take turns picking first, and we pick, we each take the 2 or 3 or 4 that we're interested in writing about. Almost always sight unseen. I mean, sometimes we will have seen something at a festival, but usually we're just sort of going on our curiosity and on our hunches and maybe our interest in the filmmaker. We try to alternate like major directors and franchise installments and stuff like that. So if one person, if I did the last Scorsese movie, she'll have the sort of the first dibs on the next one. We still, almost always, I would say like 95% of the time, see the movies in a screening room, projected, and really make an effort to see the movies that way, because it's better in a lot of different ways. But sometimes, if it's a very small release, it'll be a screener, or now more and more a link, or if we've seen something in a festival or an early program and we're going to watch it again for review, we'll sometimes see a screener or a link. So that's kind of how it works. And then we have Stephen Holden is the third staff critic, and then we have a regular, we have kind of a roster of regular freelancers, some of whom are just freelance film critics, some of whom work at the paper on the copy desk or in the art section, or are sort of floating writers. So, we try to get it right in terms of length and placement and play, and we have a fair amount of. We're very lucky. I mean, we don't have. I mean, at least Manola and I don't have very severe space constraints. So if we really want to go long on something, we can, and we can go long on smaller films, and we can make the case to get independent releases or smaller, less commercial movies onto the cover of the weekend section or in a big spread inside. So that's more or less the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, there's more to it, but that's basically how it goes.
I have a question about that, which is,
sure.
Do you ever? I mean, how many times do you watch a film?
Usually just once. I mean, usually just the volume and the scheduling makes it hard to, and a lot of movies don't necessarily benefit from being watched further.
like the Adam Sandler one.
Yeah. And when I can, I like to see them more. I mean, I was lucky last year for various reasons. I got to see a lot of the big year-end movies more than once, because I usually go to one of the fall festivals, usually to Telluride, so I see stuff there and then see it again to review it. I see some stuff a little bit early because I'm involved with the magazine Great Performances portfolio, and then I'll see it again. So I got to see Selma twice, I mean, I saw, for some reason I saw The Theory of Everything twice, which was not. I guess I didn't really need to, but I try. It usually doesn't work out that way, but it's you know, it's good when you.
I would think it'd be tough because I think if you're reviewing television, you know, you're either watching it live or you have a screener and you can pause it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to clarify something
Right.
that happened with film.
With film, you don't, and that's especially hard. A lot of times, actually, and we're doing this more and more, like with documentaries, we'll ask for a screener in addition, for exactly that reason, because that information is going by so quickly, and you know, you sometimes want to focus on claims that are being made or the way that information is being presented. But that's true. I mean, the movies in a way are still reviewed as if they were live performances, which goes back to when they first started being reviewed. And the critics would actually go on opening night. I mean, if you go back and read the archive of Times reviews from the 30s and 40s, they'll say, you know, this charming film which opened last night at the Coronet, because they'd gone, you know, to the Coronet to see Casablanca and then come back to the newsroom and, you know, write their copy, which was just what the theater critics would be doing with the play.
I would like to bring you back to your relationship with your readers or your communities. And I think we covered a lot of it tonight. We talked about the fences. We talked about the negative comments. What I would like to ask you is, just like an artist who stands on an invisible stage, and a lot of artists talk about feeding off the crowd. And some women, like you said, Anna, they draw a lot of inspiration to become their own writers. And it's phenomenal. It's very positive. How often do you feel inspired? How often did it happen that it changed the way you write? Do you see that symbiotic relationship? Or as critics and as experts, you think that perhaps that's even unnecessary?
Great question.
I think about this more and more. I mean, I find that there are two layers that I guess I would answer. One is just that, and I think this is something that social media, in particular, more than comments maybe has really kind of enhanced, is a feeling of being read. Is a feeling. I mean, when you're in the past, when you're a writer, it was kind of an imaginary conversation you were having. You sort of put your stuff out there and go out and print, and who knows what anyone thought about it or if anyone read it. And now, kind of almost instantaneously, you get, you know, it's not always friendly, but sometimes it I mean, writers, I think, universally love praise, which is the great management secret that a lot of, you know, that good editors know. But no, if you've worked really hard on something and someone or a bunch of people say, hey, you know, read this great piece by Ta-Nehisi Coates or by A.O. Scott, it feels good. And it gives you a little bit, you know, and you can sort of use it to boost your morale and keep yourself going. The other side of that I think is really fascinating, that I'm kind of feel like I'm just beginning to think about and to grapple with, is there is a movie audience. There or not even just in terms of movies, but there are other people in the world who are experiencing and thinking about the same things that you're writing about, and I find myself more and more curious about what are they seeing? How is it for them? And less, in a way, concerned about my own my own expertise. I mean, I had this is a strange example, but recently when I reviewed 50 Shades of Grey, I was just much more interested in the audience for that movie and the phenomenon of the book's popularity and how people who had read the book were going to see the movie and how they were going to experience that, than in my own, you know, assessment of whether I thought it was a good movie or not. And it started to be a bit of a challenge and a kind of interesting question to ask as a critic. Well, what are other people thinking about? What are other people experiencing?
I mean, I find that so in the comments, like so there's two parts to this. I find that in terms of information, I can pull from everywhere, you know. So from readers, I do. In terms of inspiration, yeah, I'm pretty omnivorous. I was listening to Tony talk, and I think like one of the things I had this period where I would like go to the galleries, you know, downtown, and I would spend a lot of time at the Met, and that was like priceless. Like that was like, I would write for a few days, and then like I said, okay, this afternoon I'm just gonna walk over here and like, look at some, I don't know, 15th century portraiture. And it was so cool, right? Or even something older than that, like, like some of the old sculpture they would have. Because you would think like, oh my God, there was an era like 1,500 years ago where somebody was sitting there trying to be as detailed as they possibly could in something. And I'm tripping over a lead, without the benefit of word processing or technology. And that, like that was beautiful. I listened to a ton of hip hop, which I find to be really, really inspirational, because people who are doing it at a really, really high level, rappers who are doing it at a really, really high level, have such little space to say something really, really compelling. To be really, really compelling with language, because the rhythm imposes a kind of discipline. You can't just say whatever you want. You gotta, be, on beat, as you say, X, Y, and Z. So I find that to be, really tremendous. Which, can I just take an opportunity to say, because I'm sorry, all I'm thinking about is mass incarceration right now. Everybody should really go back and listen to a ton of like gangster rap, because it is the most eloquent response to the carceral state I've ever heard. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about it from that perspective. I mean, these guys, their outlook on the world is so, God, I want to use the word wise. I actually want to say wise, which is a word I never thought I would say before. And once the piece is out, I can explain that a little bit more. But it is amazing how much information these guys are able to get across, emotional information, about what it feels like to live in a world where you have a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison. The emotional resonance that some of these guys are able to establish is pretty incredible. And I've always thought, like as a journalist, coming up, having the benefit of coming up in an era where you had like some of the best MCs, I would say, a golden era of MCing. If I could establish that kind of emotional resonance, with readers, I'd really be doing something. Like I'd really be there. And that, I think, like got me thinking a lot about structure. And so I'll think like sometimes, okay, I have my reporting, where I went and talked to, some people. I have my research where I read a bunch of books. I have, some amount of history here. I have some amount of analysis. And for a long time when I wrote, you would think, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, because it logically makes sense. But then I started thinking, largely because of other art forms, largely because of hip hop. But how about I place something here because I think it'll have the most emotional resonance here? You know what I mean? How about I put this, towards the end or towards the back of the story, because I think once I've said all of these other things, if I put this here, it'll punch you in the gut. The way, somebody, structuring a piece of music, he mostly says, okay, how about I put this here, and then this will be the effect after you've considered all of these other things. So I get a lot of inspiration from art outside, of what I actually do. And just, answering that question, I've been thinking about how I need to consume much more of it, watch a lot more film, I mean, really. Tony's been urging that on me for a while, but I really do need to. There's a lot to be learned, I think.
I want to go back to your original question, because I wanted to know, are you asking what I am inspired by, or whether the readers inspire me?
Specifically that interactive relationship with readers, both on Twitter or on...
I'm so sorry. I feel like I didn't answer the question at all.
You answered it great.
Thanks. It's somebody else's question, no? Sorry, my bad.
So about the interaction with, yeah.
How it changes the way you write, how it changes the way...
Oh, Lord,
how
I'm through that one.
relationship in a positive way. Just like
In a positive way.
Just like you
Okay.
spoke about those
Just
really
like I can talk about it in a negative way. But in a positive way, well, okay, it's hard for me to separate the positive from the negative, because it's nice to get people reacting to things that you do in a positive way, whether it's they send you an email or they put an internet comment, although I don't really read the comments anymore anywhere, or they tweet at you. But I think that I have I feel it feels like it's complicated, because what I see in the little bubble I live in, which is, especially on Twitter, like other media people that I see, there's a lot of performance of praise. So I tend to distrust some praise that comes my way. I feel like maybe it's actually a performance for somebody else, or like, I'll put it this way: the best.
You mean like if I name check this person over here and say they're the most brilliant writer on the planet, that makes me a certain, like, says something about me as a kind of tastemaker or something like that?
Yeah, or the use of hyperbole, like the most brilliant writer. I mean, like,
Right. I'll take it though.
Yeah,
If I can get it, I'll take it wherever I can get it. Yeah, what's wrong with that, right?
So I do notice that this has only been recently. A couple of years ago, I guess I didn't feel the same way. But there's a certain performativity to social media that I find distasteful right now. And even if it's, an expression of positivity, I'm a little bit skeptical of it sometimes, just because of what I see elsewhere. There's a lot of subtext going on in at least in Twitter land. But I don't know that anyone's ever said anything to me that inspired me to write something else, for example. I mean, I think that there have been discussions that have been outgrowths of things I've worked on, but I don't know if I can give you a specific example. It's like it kind of just lodges in your brain and then flowers at some other time. So it's hard for me to answer the question, I think, in the way that I want to, because I don't want to make it sound like I don't find inspiration from readers or consumers of the things that I've created. Of course I do. Some of the most memorable or momentous moments in my life have been when I've gotten emails from readers who were very moved by something either that I did personally or something that I helped bring to life. But I don't know that I'm finding inspiration from them. I'm finding inspiration, I guess, from the fact that they exist, from the fact that there are a lot of people whose stories aren't told, whose stories maybe I can help tell, that there are areas of interest that previously weren't touched upon by people in the media. So when there's an audience that reacts with not gratitude, but exhibits a sort of hunger for something that you've done and they want to see more of it, that's very gratifying. And I guess maybe that's inspiring too. But again, you don't want to reverse engineer it. You don't want to do a story on, I don't know, the plight of the passenger pigeon and have people freak out about it and then go, okay, I'm going to do another extinct bird. I don't know why I brought that up, but it's like you can't reverse engineer it. So I hope I answered your question.
I think we're just about at the end. We should probably let these people go back to their creative process. But thank you all. This was a really great.
Thank you.
Great evening, and hopefully the kind of thing that we'll continue to do as often as we can at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. Take care. Thanks.